My wife and I were looking to buy a used camper. We found a 2013 Kodiak Express on Facebook Marketplace. We really liked it. We went ahead and purchased it from a guy. Um, we were wanting to put it on a lease spot we're getting on Lake Tawakoni in Texas, which is about an hour from where we live. And we got it moved out there with some friends' help, and kind of immediately we started running into some issues. Now, first, I'm not an electrician, I'm not a certified repairman. Anything I say and do at your own risk. Please make sure you disconnect all power before you do anything. So we just dropped the trailer off, left it there. My wife showed back up later the next week, and nothing was working. We thought maybe the battery was dead, so we went and got a new battery. Turns out it was not the battery, so we did some research, thought it might be the converter. And this is what the converter will look like. That cover there shows you where it was. For us, it's under the fridge. This is some pictures of the converter itself. Started watching some videos on how to do this, and people were cutting the cables and resoldering and doing all kind of hacks to try to get it installed. And I thought, surely there's a better way to do this. So we looked around, and looking for the converter, we actually found that we could buy the converter with the entire power distribution panel there. And you can see right there the part number 8955 PEC. That's what I looked up on Amazon. I'll put a link to it in my description. But you can see here, I was just taking pictures of everything because I thought, well, if I got to replace this, I need to understand how everything's laid out. So I started taking a few pictures before we had even ordered the part, because I didn't really know what all I needed to do. And again, just matching up everything in here, getting plenty of pictures ahead of time is the biggest thing I can tell you for doing this swap. So there's the box that came in from Amazon. So we showed up a week later. We shut all the power off. We disconnected it from utility power, unplugged the battery. And there is the new unit out of the box. See, it looks exactly the same. There it is, opened. And there it is. You see, not even the little holes are punched out of the back yet. You'll have to do that at a later stage. So here I am, going to show you here. I started out doing a lot of videoing, and then really quick I realized I was getting really hot in the camper without power because I had no air. So I went to just taking a few pictures. But started out here, I'm just going to remove the cover plate. Again, like I mentioned, the power is disconnected. I completely removed the power connection. I didn't just throw the breakers outside. I removed it because I didn't want somebody to, breakers could easily get flipped back on, but plugging it in is more of a big deal. There's just 2 screws you remove for the cover, and then you kind of pull the top towards you and lift it right out of the socket there. And now there's 6 screws to remove it. There's 8 holes, but mine only had 6 screws installed. So in a minute we're going to go ahead and remove those 6 screws. Again, I'm just kind of filming the whole thing, again providing plenty of reference so I can look back at this to figure out how it was connected the first time around. And there's the converter down there. Again, and one thing you will notice, we're missing one of the little cover plates on the converter, so my guess is they've had issues with this before, since this was a used camper. It's about 6 years old at the point that we bought it. So again, just remove the 6 mounting screws that secure this thing to the cabinet. And you don't necessarily have to remove the screws first. You could begin removing all the wires. I was just trying to figure out what I was up against. So I removed those screws, and I could kind of pull the unit out a little bit and start to see what was behind there and what I would be dealing with. Getting a lot of pictures of my feet there. Should have wore some shoes or something. Okay, so and really you can't pull the unit out. When, at least in my case, I pull it and I'm pretty much at the max length of some of those cables right there. So they're all coming through the back of the panel. So in a minute we're going to start disconnecting all of those. So here I did start disconnecting the main power cable coming in. I was just taking pictures of every little thing to show what I had disconnected so I could easily get it reconnected. And I was calling out, my wife was making notes. Everything I disconnected, I would say, I'm removing the red cable from this connection, and she was writing it down. That way we just pretty much reverse the steps when we're putting everything back. Took a lot of pictures showing, especially that side where it does matter which position everything is in. And those cables, you can't really tell it here, but that's like green, white, yellow, white, purple, white. You can see there like the red, white one and stuff. There's actually two blue and white ones, so we ended up labeling one of the blue whites, one of the black whites with tie wraps with cable ties. That way we could easily go back and figure out which one was which. Now the white cables that were up there at the top and the copper cables on the side, it doesn't really matter which position those go in. Those are just in a shared bus. It does matter there on the breakers, which black cables go into which breaker. So I did label those very good as far as putting color ties on each one. Like, you know, there'd be a black cable with a red cable tie goes here. And here you can see the little looms, the busways that go in the back, bringing those cables into the panel. There was one that wasn't in a shared bus there. Those are simple to get out. They're a little harder than I thought they would be, actually, but on the inside you pretty much are just going to stick a regular screwdriver and pop the top and bottom of those clips, and they pop out. And there it is after I've removed the panel, and that's the mess of wires you have to feed back in there. So I pretty much took the new panel and punched the exact same holes out and fed each of those groups of holes or groups of cables into the correct holes, and then was able to put the unit back into the wall there and start connecting everything up. There is the new unit itself. You can see some of the cables are actually connected down to the converter, which is nice because I wasn't sure how I'd be able to get some of those back installed, but they came pre-installed since I bought the converter as is. And the one white cable and green cable there are pre-installed also from the converter. And here it is after I've pushed the looms of cables back through into the new power distribution panel. And there's just some pictures of all the wires coming in. There's definitely a lot more wiring than I was anticipating, and luckily there was no wiring issues. Once I put this system in, everything began to work. The battery was charging correctly, everything was working fine. Here it is after I've connected all the colored cables and the main power and ground cables there. Connected all the copper cables, and there it is fully installed. I just pretty much followed the exact same steps. You took it apart, except now you're putting it back together. This one was a little different. Here's the old one. Notice the old school LEDs and resistors. The new one has new, more modern LEDs and resistors. And there it is with everything installed. I kept the same cover plate because it was already labeled with what each breaker and each fuse was for. As I mentioned, there's my wife's documentation of every cable where it went, just to make it easy for us to put it back into place without messing anything up. And now that we're done, we get to enjoy the campsite. Just a couple of pictures of what we deal with. You know, great sunsets. We get to watch the deer from our camp, and we just love it. And now that we're to the point that everything's working in the camper, we can just chill and not be outside sweating because we can't get the air to work. Appreciate this video. Please give me a like and subscribe. Thanks.